Hello and welcome to our channel, MarshStream, your public performance broadcast platform. Please make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. You can also donate to our tip jar and support the arts and artists of MarshStream by clicking the link below in the description. Check out our website, themarsh.org, for all upcoming live performances. Now, enjoy the show.
I'm not sure how long this takes. Part of me wants to just tell you the end, which you could Google who deciphered the ancient writing known as Linear B and see what comes up. It might say Alice Kober, or it might say a man, Michael Ventris. But is that true? Is it historically accurate? I'm not a historian. I get more interested in the little side footnotes, the personal stories, than in big events. And the more history you read, the more you realize that even big events can seem completely different based on who's telling. It's like each version just shows that person's own prejudices and preoccupations. In this case, you're getting mine. Alice Kober was born in New York City in 1906. Her parents were recent immigrants from Hungary. Her father, an upholsterer, later a building superintendent. Alice earned a scholarship to go to Hunter College, where she studied Greek and Latin, the classics. When Alice graduated in 1928, she told friends that she wanted to decipher Linear B. I mean, that seems like a big thing to take on at 21 years old. But how long does it take to decipher a language? And how much time will you have? No one can know the length of their life. The Greeks had a saying. So why not start early? Linear B was discovered by an English archaeologist in 1900. They were digging at Knossos, the ancient capital of Crete, and found hundreds of tablets filled with writing that dated to 1450 BCE, the age of the Odyssey and the Iliad, but 700 years before the invention of the Greek alphabet. So what language were they? Crete used to have its own language, but that faded away. It lost to history. The island is 1999 miles from mainland Greece and just as far from Turkey. So what language was it? Crete is famous in mythology for the myth of King Minos, the Labyrinth, and the Minotaur. I had to look those up. I never really liked mythology as a kid. It has all these intense subjects like murder, rape, incest that they try to gloss over. So it didn't really make sense. And a hero will do great things because he is a hero. A woman will fall for him because he's a hero. That love is always instant, a heart inflamed with passion. And the gods can step in at any moment to turn the tables, making everything like completely arbitrary. Plus, women don't get to be heroes. The most a woman can hope for is to be a star in the sky at her death. It's the Constellation Consolation Prize. Stars used to seem bigger back then. For most of humanity, before light pollution, you would step away from the fire and the stars be right there, hanging just above the land, brighter than any flame, which is half light and half heat. And when the moon is full, it seems to guide you or follow you. I was reminded of this recently, camping. You step outside and the stars begin so close to the ground or almost near enough to touch. I don't know how many stars Alice Kober saw in New York. She started teaching Greek and Latin during graduate school. She told students, "You know a great work when you feel the back of your neck tingle." Alice became a professor at Brooklyn College. It had just been founded in 1930. It was the first part of City University of New York to teach men and women together. A free college, it became known as the working man's Harvard. It took good students who could not get in elsewhere because of their religion or race. Alice bought a house for herself and her mother in Flatbush. And in her free time, she worked on Linear B, writing sets of symbols on little note cards that Alice stored in empty cigarette cartons. She loved to smoke. It's the one vice of hers that I could find out about, that little flame and the smoke drifting heavenward. Does Alice's hard work pay off? I want to tell you, but first you have to know the myth on Crete. King Minos received a gift from the gods. Which god it was depends on which version you're reading. It was a bull that he was supposed to sacrifice to the gods. That bull was so beautiful, so studly. Minos put off the sacrifice, admiring the bull and adding it to his herd. He thought the gods might not notice, and things seemed to go well. The harvest, good. His wife, about to bear a child. But it turned out that his wife, the queen, had also admired that bull. The child is born. With the head of a bull, the Minotaur. King Minos builds a labyrinth to hold the beast and starts a war to distract himself. He lays siege to Athens and does not give peace until they agree to send 14 youths every 9 years to be fed to the Minotaur. Was this the kind of story Alice was hoping to find on the tablets? There were lots of things women weren't supposed to read back then. Even parts of the Bible were considered inappropriate for women. But if you could read Greek and Latin, you found wild pagan orgies, forbidden passions. The tablets could hold the truth of the labyrinth, or who knows what else. I feel bad to say this, but all the pictures I've seen of Alice, she looks unremarkable. Brown hair, pulled back, small mouth, maybe a hint of a smile. Her biographer said she tended toward plumpish. I do not see that. The kind of woman who wear sensible shoes. I think that's part of why I'm so drawn to Alice's story. Not being a striking beauty with luscious lips. Plus, I love puzzles and mysteries. I will devour detective novels and crime shows, waiting to see who done it. Sometimes I'm disappointed at the end. Do you know that feeling, like sad? When all the possibilities, all the great questions of life are narrowed down to one motive and a single act. I want a solution to the mystery, but I think that's part of why I have trouble in life sometimes. But I'll consider so many options, and I will choose a course of action. I'll apply myself. But then doubt creeps in, like, what's the point? But Alice Kober never experienced that. She boldly set her course like a hero. After years of Greeks sending young people to be fed to the Minotaur, one year, the king of Athens' son, Theseus, volunteers to go and slay the Minotaur. His father says no, but Theseus is young and bold. He's a hero type. And that's what they do. Their ship is met on Crete by King Minos and his daughter, Ariadne. We don't know how old Ariadne was, probably 15 or 16. And she must have been beautiful. Because you never hear of ugly women in these stories unless they're evil. Ariadne's father made her host the welcome feast for the sacrificees. And she saw Theseus, tall, muscled, with his hair pulled back in a braid. And she couldn't imagine him being eaten by her older brother, like her parents with the bull. Ariadne wanted to foil this sacrifice. So that night, she crept to the prison where the victims were being held. And she gave Theseus a ball of string, a sword, and a magic glowing crown that her cousin Dionysus gave her last year when the two of them snuck away from some royal adult boringness to check out the caves by the shore. Yes, Dionysus, god of wine and wild abandon. But he wasn't a god yet then. He was just a reckless teen with all these stories about who his real father was. And the crown was just made of laurel leaves, like one step up from a daisy crown, until she saw how it glowed. Maybe his father really was a god. But that was last year. Right now, Ariadne is handing the crown to Theseus. She instructs him to tie the string to the gate of the labyrinth, sneak in, kill the Minotaur while it sleeps, and then follow the string back out. Do they kiss or even touch? They don't know how much time they have. Ariadne waits by the gate. Can she see the stars? I imagine it's often clear and starry on Crete. I never used to really be into looking at stars and astronomy. I thought that was something about me. Then I learned that my hometown, Buffalo, New York, has the most gray days of any place in North America. I could look across Lake Erie and see Canada 10 miles away, but the stars were too far. Did Ariadne often look across the sea and dream of going to Greece? Or was this the first time, moved by love for Theseus? Or was she an opportunist, desperate to get away? Her home life cannot have been good, living with her parents since the episode with the bull and the Minotaur. Sometimes she wished they would just get divorced. But then she never would have been born. This is her first chance to maybe leave with someone since Dionysus, and he's fun, but they're just kids. Plus, he's her cousin. Once, when I was in my 20s, I went home for a cousin's wedding, and my mother pushed me to line up for the bouquet toss. The flowers came toward me. I expected someone else to reach in and grab them, but they bounced off my chest. I had to pick them up and then watch as the groom slid the garter off the bride's leg and toss it. My boyfriend reached, but someone else snagged it. Good looking, not a complete stranger. I had to sit in front of everyone. He was going to slide it up my leg. My face flushed, red, hot. I turned to him. You know, we're cousins. Ariadne hears a sound. Is that a fight? An animal? Ka-chunk, ka-chunk. Alice Kober used a hole punch to mark the file cards that she cut out of old envelopes, postcards, and cigarette wrappers, frugal during the Great Depression of the 1930s and paper shortages of World War II. The holes helped Alice organize the cards. She was building a database. She studied statistics and used a slide rule, finding patterns in the symbols. Linear B has 87 symbols, too many for an alphabet. English has 26 letters, Greek 24, Arabic 28, but not enough for pictographs. Chinese has over 50,000 symbols. There was most likely a syllabary where a symbol shows a consonant and vowel together. But what sounds? What words? Ariadne and Theseus likely didn't speak the same language, since Crete had its own. Ariadne might have tied the string to the gate for Theseus, but the rest could be explained with her eyes. Who needs words? Alice Kober found lists of words followed by numbers, like bookkeeping, and Alice deduced the symbol for total. Then she got gender, total men and women, boys and girls, cows and bulls. These were major advances that no other scholar had made in 40 years of trying, not the ones at fancy English universities or Greece or Norway or Harvard and Yale. It was Alice Kober in Brooklyn. I want to cheer for her. Go Alice, go Alice. For working class girls, woo! For unremarkable women, yeah! For sensible shoes. You can cheer at home. Go Alice, go Alice. I mean, not that she'd hear all those years ago in Brooklyn. Cheers there would be for the Dodgers, which she could have heard. I know when I lived in New York, I could tell when the Yankees had a big night from like a mile away. Maybe Alice did hear the roar of the crowd, yeah, and imagine it was for her, hard at work as the stars twinkled overhead. Go Alice, go Alice. Alice wrote a paper for the American Journal of Archaeology, and she befriended its editor, a young professor at University of Pennsylvania who studied ancient writing on the island of Cyprus. He encouraged her to publish more, and the two of them joked in letters about the sloppy work of colleagues and amateurs, some of whom thought Linear B was ancient Etruscan or Hittite. Alice got a Guggenheim Fellowship to go to Oxford, England, and study photographs of the inscriptions that had never been published. The actual tablets had been hidden in Crete since before the war. Alice wrote in her application, "We may learn the truth of King Minos and the secrets of the Labyrinth, or merely that Mr. X sold cattle to Mr. Y." Either way, Alice wanted to know. She commuted to Yale to study Sanskrit and practiced speed writing symbols so she could copy as many as possible while there. Afraid of flying, Alice took a ship across the Atlantic. England was still recovering from World War II. She didn't know what it would be like. Alice had been to Greece once in 1939 to see the ancient sites. Ariadne had never been to Greece. Did she get nervous as she waited by the gate, questioning her choices? Or was she in that first flush of meeting someone when you cannot think of anything except that person, his eyes and mouth, his hand when he took the sword? It was heavy for her, but he took it lightly. And his arms, their footsteps, and there he is. There's sweat and blood. But he nods, and they hurry to free the others and then to the ship. She should have worn her other sandals. They're not as cute as these ones, but she didn't plan on running. Ariadne watches Theseus direct the others onto the ship. He's a natural leader, maybe a little too sure of himself, but he is cut, every muscle defined He looks at her with respect, gratitude, desire. She knows that look from her cousin, Dionysus, whose eyes were always changing. He'd be laughing, challenging, then hungry, then switching again. But I'm taking too long. This is why I did not become an academic. My whole senior thesis in college was on one episode of Don Quixote. I refuted an academic's interpretation of a scene. I figured out enough Italian to read a similar tale in Orlando Furioso and wrote speculating on the Italian work's influence on Cervantes. My professor nominated it for a prize and said to try graduate school. But can you build a life on arguing with other academics? I didn't think I would be able to contribute something real to knowledge. Because I get distracted, I digress. One of the amateurs studying Linear B was Michael Ventris, an English architect who served as a navigator during World War II. A whiz at languages and reading maps, he would give directions in the air, then work on Linear B during a flight in wartime. He was raised in Switzerland, his father English, his mother Polish. He mastered French, German, Polish, English, Swiss German. His parents were in analysis with Carl Jung, who advised them never to touch the boy and only to speak when necessary. The parents divorced when he was 10, and they sent him to a boarding school in England. But on a field trip there, he met the archaeologist who had discovered Linear B. And Michael became fascinated with deciphering the secret writing. His father died when he was a teen. His mother committed suicide soon after. At many points of his life, Michael Ventris's could be called tragic. He's kind of an underdog, like Alice, except rich. Alice's friend at University of Pennsylvania pushed her to apply for a professorship there and to head a center for early classical studies. Alice's mentor doubted they would give the position to a woman, though he felt she deserved it. Ariadne and Theseus on the ship were both teenagers, suddenly bound to each other. They could gaze into each other's eyes, but everyone could see them. Could they touch or just stand side by side? Crete is a long way from Greece. All the versions of the story say they stopped at Naxos to rest. Maybe there, Ariadne and Theseus could finally find a private spot and kiss, or that's all romantic fantasy, speculation. Back to facts. Michael Ventris was young and good looking. He married a fellow architecture student, and they had 2 children. But he took little interest in them, his daughter later said. And his wife felt they had little to talk about. On vacations, he worked on Linear B. His energy, insights, and beautiful drawings of the symbols got him invited to a summit of experts held in Oxford in 1948. It was Alice's second time there. But Michael Ventris was overwhelmed being around the experts and academics. He left after the first evening. He wrote the organizer to apologize. "I did not fear death or German bombs during the war, but I was too intimidated by the others to stay." Young, but not bold, not a hero type. Alice didn't mention meeting him. She wasn't looking for a hero to rescue her. Back at home in Brooklyn, Alice separated the symbols that were logograms, like pictures of things like stallion, mare, rooster, and hen, and the ones that were syllables. Ariadne and Theseus, most of the versions of the story say, slept on Naxos. But then Athena, the goddess, came to Theseus, and she told him that he could not take Ariadne with him to Athens. She said that Ariadne was promised to her cousin, Dionysus. Nothing official, but the two of them went into a cave together, and he gave her a magic glowing crown. Theseus knows that crown. Was he upset? Had he fallen in love with Ariadne? Did Athena have to drag him to the ship, ripping the crown from his hand, leaving Theseus with no keepsake but a flimsy sandal? Or was Athena's visit just a story that Theseus told to explain leaving without the woman who would save their lives? Was he an opportunist who took Ariadne's help and then broke his promise to help her escape to Athens? Maybe he was afraid of being responsible for her, or not wanting to admit how much she had helped him slay the Minotaur. So he rushed the others to the boat and told them she doesn't want to come. Ariadne wakes to find Theseus gone. No note. The Greeks hadn't invented their alphabet yet, but not even a heart and crying emoji in the sand. The ship on the water. No. I saved your life. Marooned on the island. Ariadne goes and kills herself. Tragic Ariadne. If that's where the story ends, but I don't like this version. You realize the more Greek and Roman stories you read, the women don't have it much better in them than in the Judeo-Christian canon. I mean, the few women who do great things like Athena or Artemis, they have to be totally pure, like celibate. And the women who risk, who desire, it never ends well. And the most they can get is that star in the sky. The stars are bright, but you can't touch them. Alice did not get the professorship at University of Pennsylvania. Her friend apologized. He felt that mediocre senior faculty were intimidated by her work. Alice felt it was because she was a woman. In letters, she's disappointed but resigned. She wrote, "I've been a pessimist from way back." He still thinks she could head the Center on Early Classical Studies. There's still hope with that, there's still time. Alice writes, "I haven't told you I'm grateful for all you're doing. I am. It's been fun, too." But then her friend, dies suddenly of a heart attack. His heart inflamed. Alice writes a friend, "It is very sad. I still can't believe it. I was really hoping the two of them would get together. Were you too? They seemed perfect for each other, assuming they were interested. I was hoping the story would go that way. You see, I'm no scholar, just a cheesy romantic." Alice has her work, her mother, her cigarettes. It's not tragic for her, but a loss. Alice has almost 180,000 note cards now. She's piecing together what root words go with what endings. She makes grids showing the grammar, and she finds transition symbols at the ends of root words that sometimes change with endings. Like in English, leaf becomes leaves, life becomes lives. And this is important because this hints at pronunciation. Alice could be the one to uncover the mystery. But then she gets sick in the hospital. It takes them a month to figure out what she has, and then surgery and 6 weeks of recovery. She has to take off the fall semester. It's hard to walk upstairs at home after all the weeks in bed. But this means she can give all the time she has to Linear B. She helps a researcher at Yale who has access to tablets discovered on Pylos, mainland Greece, in 1939. She writes him, "Rivalry has no place in true scholarship. I will help you any way possible. The important thing is the solution of the mystery, not who solves it." And Alice is asked to edit the second volume of the Pylos tablets. But then she gets sick again, back in the hospital. She doesn't write colleagues what she has. TMI was a lot bigger back then. Does she know what she has? I mean, sometimes doctors kept secrets from patients. Alice writes, "I am still ill. That is, I am recovering from the cure. I don't know how long it will take. Neither do the doctors." Could she have cancer? Her father had stomach cancer. Maybe she's getting radiation, and doses back then were higher than today. Alice wants to apply for a fellowship to go to Oxford in the summer, or maybe Crete. But she writes, my doctors are not too encouraging about an early recovery. She realizes the Yale researcher has not shown her as many Pylos inscriptions as she has shown him of the ones from Crete. The ones she's seen have been invaluable, but she needs more pieces to complete the puzzle. Alice spots the symbol for and like a button and hooks onto the end of a word, like in Latin. And she is filling more of the grammar. She's getting close. Can she sense where the tale is going? A reader of symbols and signs, does she feel a force? Maybe the gods or nature turning the tale. Tragic. Alice dies in 1950, 43 years old. Just 1 year after her first symptoms. Maybe life is like the myths where the gods can just step in and turn the tables, and it all seems arbitrary. I don't like this version of the story. In some versions of Ariadne's tale, she doesn't kill herself when Theseus leaves. And Dionysus comes for her. He's a god now, so the cousin thing doesn't apply. And he takes her, and they have wild adventures. And she bears him several children, but he's always going away. And there are other women. So it's kind of like she doesn't really have him. Maybe you never can with a god. She gets the consolation prize. Although it's not her face or form in the stars, just that stupid glowing crown. Maybe it would have been better had it been just laurel leaves, no magic glow to guide Theseus. He would have just gotten eaten by the Minotaur and avoid that whole story. Michael Ventris, the architect, who was never touched as a child, picked up the pieces, all Alice's insights, plus the tablets from Pylos are published. And they show in combinations of symbols not seen on the tablets from Crete. Michael Ventris gets the idea these could be place names. He tries replacing symbols with Greek letters, like if pitchfork thing is switched out with pi, p, and upside down mountain, lambda, la, that gives Pylos. And if that pattern is repeated throughout, it gave other place names, even some names of the gods. The mystery solved 2 years after Alice's death. Michael Ventris found that Linear B is an archaic form of Greek, written with symbols that predated the Greek alphabet. I imagine Alice looking down from the stars. Ah, we did it. I wish I could have seen the Pylos tablets. Would I have thought place names? I don't know. I needed more time. Michael Ventris was hailed as a genius in England. He went on the BBC and was offered professorships. His name is the one that comes up when you Google who deciphered Linear B. Unjust to Alice that it's usually one name at the top, usually a man. We've heard that before. Michael Ventris was an opportunist. Was he a hero? It turned out he was intimidated by the academic positions. He backed out of book deals, returning money. He said, "I doubt I could contribute anything more to knowledge." Was he aware how much of the solution had been Alice's doing? Like a kid who cheats on a test and suddenly terrified to see he's supposed to apply the material he never mastered. Or did he feel guilty, getting all the credit for part of the work? Like Theseus was hailed as a hero for slaying the Minotaur, but he knew he couldn't have done it without Ariadne's help. He became king of Athens, but he also did these risky stunts. He got in a drunken brawl with a centaur after a wedding. And he helped a friend try to steal Hades' wife. Maybe Theseus did love Ariadne. Years later, he went to Crete and kidnapped her sister to marry her. Like maybe he was trying to recapture a feeling that he'd had with Ariadne. But kidnapping is not a way to start a relationship, Theseus. It ended tragically for her. Two years after deciphering Linear B, Michael Ventris drove his car into the back of a truck parked on a dark road. Was it suicide or an accident? There was no note, but there were oddities about the crash and those letters backing out of projects. Which is more tragic? A man cut down in his prime, or someone who realizes his life's dream only to see that doesn't make him happy? I imagine Alice watching at his death. Oh, gods! And then, what? Did you end your own life? You had jobs, you had respect, you had the luxury to work on what you loved. I would have treasured more time. There are still other questions to be answered, not just languages, but people, history. What kind of story to tell? I mean, that's what I tell myself, that there are always more mysteries to solve. Maybe I'll go to Easter Island, Rapa Nui, and decipher Rongo Rongo, the inscriptions on the statues. Journey to the Pacific and uncover mysterious ancient wisdom. Or just know for certain that there is no such thing. And maybe that broke Michael Ventris's heart. Finally deciphering Linear B to see that it's bookkeeping, tallies of rams and ewes, roosters and hens, baskets of barley and olives, rations given to enslaved people and their children. No insight into how to live or love. The ancients were just as messed up as we are, focusing on the wrong things: money, a shiny star, a handsome face. Unless that is the right thing. Alice followed her passion, studying Linear B. And there could be more tablets out there. I mean, the ones on Crete were buried for 3,000 years before they were unearthed. And some could be not bookkeeping. It just takes one scribe who's a dreamer and doesn't write what he's told. Or maybe one who brings his daughter to work, if he doesn't have a son to pass the trade down to. And she scrapes in the wet clay a tale told on the island of a queen, a bull, a monster, and a girl, Ariadne, who grows up seeing the fear, the pain, hearing the cries of the Minotaur, and she resolves to take action. She tells her cousin, Dionysus, I am going to end the curse of the Minotaur. He laughs. Everyone wants to kill their brother. That's why there's a name for it. The gods punish fratricide. Come away with me instead. No, he would still terrorize my sisters, the whole island. It has to end. Dionysus goes away, but Ariadne plots and plans. The next time a shipment of victims comes, Ariadne chooses the strongest, the boldest. That night, she creeps to the prison where they're being held, and she tells him, I will help you kill the Minotaur. He asks, why? Why me? She can't tell him. She looks away. He thinks she's shy. He assumes it's love. His name is Theseus. He kills the Minotaur. It couldn't have been someone from her family. The gods would have sent more pain for killing family. They hurry to free the others and then to the ship. Good thing Ariadne wore her sensible shoes. Theseus takes her hand. It's hard to understand what he says. He stares. She has to go. She'll get in more trouble if she stays. It's awkward on the ship. She hears the sailors debating where to stop and rest. So Ariadne speaks up. Naxos, my cousin, says it has a good harbor. So they rest on Naxos. And when it's time to get on the ship, Ariadne jumps off just as it sets sail, and she hides behind rocks until it's far at sea. Then Ariadne scrambles to the shore in her thick-soled shoes. The Minotaur is gone, and the Greeks. Her plan a success. and no one knows it was her doing. Dionysus comes. She didn't know he'd be here, but she had a feeling he might. He looks at her like he had a feeling too. She tells him about Theseus and how she gave him a ball of yarn she had spun and the magic crown. He laughs and they joke. It's so good to be able to talk to him. They sing. There's wine. It turns to passion. Things always get out of hand with Dionysus. Passion, wild abandon, betrayal. Ariadne savors it all. She did the important thing. She ended the curse of the Minotaur. Her only regret years later is when Theseus goes back and takes her sister. He wasn't supposed to do that. He wasn't meant to remember her. A woman shouldn't try to be a hero. He had a job to do. She gave him the tools. We don't know what Ariadne looked like. I think brown hair, small mouth, maybe a hint of a smile, and sensible shoes. This is the version I want. The basic elements are all the same. It's just a different perspective. And it could be out there waiting to be uncovered. Archaeologists just found more Dead Sea Scrolls a few months ago. And we'll be able to read this when it's found. Alice Kober gave us the tools. What inflamed her was passion, not for a man or glory, but to solve the mystery. Time to get digging. I have to go to Greece because we don't know how much time we have. Even the stars are always changing. And we, of course, are the stuff of stars, every element in us, born in that same fire that inflamed the magic flowing crown and Ariadne and Alice Kober. Okay.
Awesome, Sharon. Oh, I'm gonna pop in here. Hi, everyone. I'm Dave. I'm David Harada. I'm with the Marsh. We're gonna take a few minutes to do a little Q&A here. The crowd's going wild in chat here. What a lovely piece.
Oh, thanks.
And any of you, if you have questions or comments, please put them in the chat. Likewise, if you're watching on YouTube, we'll pass those on to Sharon as well. There's so much here. And I'd like to express an appreciation about what you did with this, that you, Sharon, the narrator, the storyteller, your eyes were so open, I think, to the, shall we say, limitations of the Greek heroes and of the myths themselves. Your eyes were very open, and yet you were also, I also felt what we were seeing was this wide-eyed love of the discovery and of the characters.
I was seduced by the characters.
And so, you know, there's so much here. Can you comment a little bit about how you brought these pieces together? Where did you start? Was it Linear B? Was it Alice? Was it Ariadne and Theseus?
It started with, I read a book about Alice Kober deciphering Linear B a few years ago. And I just thought, oh, that's cool. I like that because I like mysteries and puzzles. And it's a story, you know, she's hardworking, but then someone else gets the credit. But then a little bit I felt like, Well, that's kind of a story we've heard before. I mean, sadly, like in Uncovering DNA, I read the book about
Yes,
Rosalind
Rosalind Franklin.
Franklin, who took the pictures. And it's almost like she stepped out of the room to say, hey guys, look what I saw. And they went, oh, it's DNA, a double helix. And they get all the credit. I mean, they were scientists too, but, and in this, and I started out like, I wanted to just be, go Alice, this is an injustice, and ooh, boo, Michael Ventris, but I get drawn to him too.
Well, yeah, I found that fascinating. The sense of compassion you had for Michael Ventris, um, and there was this moment there where you're sort of pondering his state of mind at the end, and I felt like, oh, you're finding this connection with this man who maybe felt this same disappointment you talk about having when the mystery is solved.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and did one question I wrote to myself was, do you really think Ventris had the same love for the pursuit that Alice did, that you do? He was obviously very troubled.
Yeah, I mean, I think he did. I mean, the fact he pursued it from when he was probably 14 when he met the archaeologist and learned about Linear B, and he stuck with it his whole life. And yeah, when he worked as an architect, and at times he was able to take breaks from work, and the Alice Kober thought she was annoyed, these amateurs who would waste her time because she was teaching full time and doing all these other things while trying to do it.
Oh, okay. I'd like to circle back to that, but there are a couple of comments and questions here, and we've got so much in the chat. I can't keep track of who said everything, but whoever you were out there who said, Sharon, you're a star. I'm totally down with that. That was such a wonderful thing. Someone also asked about anything else you've written, any other work, because you have written several solo shows.
Some other solo shows. Nothing like this. Like, this is the first one this is in a way the first time I've really put myself in something this openly, because usually I do fiction. Most people write autobiographical, but I usually just do fiction. So this time I talk about myself. So that's the first. But yeah, I did Savage Arts, which was done at the Marsh, and then Crazy Famous at the Marsh Berkeley. But yeah.
Yeah, and then someone is asking about the spelling of Alice's last name, and it says, I'd love to read that book. What was that book, and could you give us Alice's spelling?
Yeah. Alice Kober, Kober, and the book, which I don't have right here, is called The Riddle of the Labyrinth. And it's by Margalit Fox. If you search Riddle of the Labyrinth, it's the book that comes up, and the author's last name is Fox.
Okay.
So yeah, I recommend it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it sounds wonderful. And does it also tell Ventris's story as well?
Yeah, that's where I got most of it. And for a while, I didn't want to learn about Ventris because I was like, I'm not going to, I don't want to read too much about him and turn my allegiances. But pretty much the stuff I said is in the book. I found an audio of him giving a short interview. So I listened to that a few times, finally. But I don't know, I didn't find any recording of Alice speaking, but there are a lot of photographs.
Yeah. Well, it's such a lovely piece, the way you've woven all of this together, and this this playing of myth, how myths are made myth in the sense of grand epic story, and also stories that are untrue, woven out of half truth, and immortality, and finding place, and everything. It's really lovely. What was just kind of slightly nerdy question here? I think you mentioned that the linear B, it dates back to what, about 1400 BCE, and I think you make some reference to around the time of Homer.
Well, it was actually a little bit before Homer. So then, yeah, I used to say the time of Homer, but it was actually before Homer, but it might be the time of the Trojan War, so the time when his works were set were before Homer's day. Though they say, but though the Odyssey and the Iliad were also oral, he didn't necessarily write them down.
Right. I mean, the blind bard,
Yeah.
as they called him. And I thought it was really terrific the way you bring us at the end to your story of Ariadne.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of made me think that, in parallel with this idea of this written language from the time of Homer, who did speak things orally, as best we know.
Mm-hmm.
And here you are kind of picking that up. You are becoming the tale teller, the myth maker.
Yeah.
And it's lovely and it's very satisfying.
Thanks so much.
So I will say, just writing fun to follow on so many. The writing is fun to follow on so many levels, and love the way your specific physical movements were like a kind of pictography, like the symbols. The hero.
Yeah.
And
I get so bored on Zoom. I don't want to just be a face without moving. So I try to.
And it was a terrific use of the medium. So and thank you all in the audience for engaging with this, and for Sharon, I will forward you the chat so everyone who has bothered to comment, your voices will be heard because they deserve to be.
Thank you.
And I would also like to say, for those of you in the audience, this performance will be archived on the Marsh's YouTube channel, the MarshStream YouTube. So if you know people who should have been here, who should have seen it, they have another chance. There will be other opportunities to see this, and I'll watch it again. I will watch this again. Thank you for this.
Thank you so much.
And do you have? And last question is: do you have any upcoming projects that you'd like to plug?
No.
Okay.
It kind of came out of the blue, so yeah.
Well, I'm sure we'll be hearing more from you. I mean, your creativity is marvelous, and
thanks so much.
Done so much. So, thank you, Sharon. Thank you to the audience.
For watching. And tip the Marsh.
Yes, please do. And thank you all for being here. And everyone have a great night.
Yes. Bye. Cool. Okay. Oh, thanks. Cool. All right.
How do I describe my journey with
your mother? Who takes care of you? Who takes you to the doctor when you're sick? Your mother.
Good morning, New York. Buenos dias. It's me. What's up?
We went out for lunch at a sushi place where she tried sushi for the first time and she liked it.
I see that change can happen. I know things can shift and change for good.
I am dizzily dazzled with stars in my eyes.
Same level as I broke my neck. But he's not getting the same return of function I am.
And I don't want any of your smart aleck sex talk that I usually get when I get.
This is beyond the marsh, because what you're doing is planting beautiful seeds for artists to grow.